I arrested the Alpha over a speeding ticket in Seattle. Now he won't stop following me. Prologue. The silver dagger pressed against Miley's throat, cold enough to burn. She could see her reflection in the blade. Wide eyes, pale skin, the kind of terror that makes time slow down and speed up all at once. The penthouse around her was all glass and steel, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that glittered like scattered diamonds. Valoria. A place where billionaires built empires and forgot that people like her existed. Drake Reeves stood 3 feet away, hands raised, amber eyes blazing with something between rage and desperation. 2 weeks ago, she'd arrested this man for speeding. 2 weeks ago, she thought he was just another rich guy with too much money and not enough sense. Now she knew the truth. He wasn't human. He was something older, something dangerous, something that shouldn't exist outside of fairy tales and nightmares. And he'd let her arrest him. On purpose. The wolf holding the blade, rust-colored fur, yellow eyes, teeth like broken glass, growled low in its throat. It smelled like wet dog and copper and rot. Michael, Alpha of the Iron Hollow Pack. The monster who'd burned down her apartment building, killed her boss, and declared war on everything Drake cared about. Which apparently included her. One move, Reeves, and I open her throat, Michael said. His voice was gravel scraped across concrete. You know I'll do it. Drake's hands trembled. Not from fear. From restraint. Every muscle in his body was coiled tight, ready to spring, ready to tear Michael apart with his bare hands. But he didn't move. Couldn't move. Not while that blade kissed Miley's skin. She'd never seen him look helpless before. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever witnessed. But let's back up. Because the night Miley Lipa pulled over Drake Reeves for the first time, she had exactly $412 in her bank account, an eviction notice taped to her apartment door, and absolutely no idea that werewolves were real. Before we go any further, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Are you in Seattle, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles? Somewhere across the ocean? We'd love to hear from you. I'll be reading your replies. Now, buckle up and get comfortable. Let's find out what happens when you accidentally arrest your soulmate. If you enjoy werewolf stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this story unfolds. Chapter 1. The town of Oak Haven was dying. Not the romantic kind of dying you see in movies, where everything fades to sepia and people talk about the good old days with misty eyes. This was the ugly kind. The brutal kind. The kind where the mill shuts down and takes 300 jobs with it, where families pack up in the middle of the night because they can't afford rent, where the only grocery store closes and suddenly people are driving 40 minutes just to buy milk. Miley had watched it happen. Had watched her town bleed out, slow and painful, over the course of 4 years. She'd grown up here. Knew every street, every family, every story. Her mother had worked at the mill before the cancer took her. Her father had left when she was 6, chasing opportunities that never materialized. She'd stayed because someone had to. Because Oak Haven needed people who remembered what it used to be and refused to let it disappear completely. Being a deputy sheriff in a dying town wasn't glamorous. It was cold fries from the gas station at midnight, broken equipment held together with duct tape and prayer, and the constant gnawing fear that tomorrow you'd be unemployed. Sheriff Canton had pulled her aside 3 weeks ago, voice heavy with regret, and told her the county was cutting positions. Budget shortfalls. Revenue losses. All the polite ways of saying nobody cared about places like Oak Haven anymore. You've got 2 months, Lipa, Canton had said. Prove you're worth keeping or I can't help you. So there she was, parked behind a burned-out Wendy's on Route 7 at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, hunting for violations like a desperate animal searching for scraps. Her patrol car was a 2009 Crown Victoria that groaned like an arthritic grandparent every time she turned the key. The air conditioning had died during the last heat wave. The windshield had a crack that started at the bottom left corner and spiderwebbed its way up toward the rear view mirror. The check engine light had been on so long she'd stopped noticing it. The radar gun was duct taped to the dashboard because the mounting bracket had broken 3 years ago, and there was no budget to replace it. She'd learned to angle it just right, compensating for the slight tilt, making sure it caught vehicles before they saw her cruiser tucked in the shadows. Miley ate cold fries that tasted like cardboard and regret. The eviction notice crumpled in her glove compartment felt like it was radiating heat, impossible to ignore even when she wasn't looking at it. 30 days. That's all she had. 30 days to come up with 2 months of back rent, or she'd be homeless. In Oak Haven, there weren't exactly a lot of housing options. Most of the apartment complexes had been condemned or abandoned. The ones still standing were falling apart, but they were all she could afford. She'd grown up poor, had spent her childhood wearing hand-me-downs and pretending she wasn't hungry during lunch because her mom couldn't always afford to pack her food. She'd clawed her way through community college, worked 3 jobs to pay for the police academy, and built a life out of sheer stubbornness and pride. The thought of losing it all, of ending up back where she started, made her stomach twist. That's when she saw the headlights. Coming fast. Way too fast. Miley sat up so quickly she nearly knocked her soda off the dashboard. The radar gun started screaming, that high-pitched whine that meant someone was about to have a very bad night. 148 miles per hour. Her heart kicked into overdrive. That wasn't just a speeding ticket. That was reckless endangerment. Possible DUI. Maybe even a stolen vehicle. That was the kind of violation that justified her paycheck, that proved to Canton and the county board that Oak Haven still needed law enforcement. That was job security. She flipped on her lights and sirens, the Crown Vic's engine roaring to reluctant life as she punched the gas. The vehicle ahead didn't slow down, not at first. For one terrifying second, she thought they were going to run. High-speed chases were dangerous, especially on these roads. Route 7 had curves that could flip a car if you took them wrong, and at 148 miles per hour, wrong was basically guaranteed. Then, smooth as silk, the vehicle decelerated. Just a controlled, precise slowdown as it pulled onto the shoulder. That's when Miley got a good look at what she'd pulled over. A Rolls-Royce Phantom. Not just any Rolls-Royce. This thing was a work of art. Obsidian black paint that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Custom rims that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Windows tinted so dark they looked like sheets of polished midnight. The license plate was simple, elegant, and somehow menacing. Kestrel 1. This car cost more than her house. More than 10 of her houses. More than she'd earn in the next decade, even if she got promoted to sheriff. Miley grabbed her flashlight, checked her sidearm out of habit, and stepped out of the cruiser. The night air was cold enough to bite. November in the Pacific Northwest meant rain, wind, and temperatures that hovered just above freezing. She could see her breath misting in front of her face as she approached the driver's side window. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. This was it. This ticket could change everything. The window rolled down with a soft electric hum, and Miley got her first look at Drake Reeves. Unfair. That was the only word that came to mind. The man was unfair. Mid-30s, maybe, though something about him suggested he could be older. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass. Dark hair pushed back from his face like he'd just run his fingers through it. Casual, but somehow perfect. And his eyes, God, his eyes. Amber. Not brown, not gold, but true amber. The color of expensive whiskey held up to sunlight, warm and liquid, and impossible to look away from. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of fabric that whispered money with every movement. He smelled like cedar and smoke and something else she couldn't identify. Something that made her stomach flip in a way that had absolutely nothing to do with the cold fries sitting heavy in her gut. He looked at her and he smiled. Not a guilty smile. Not the sheepish, caught-in-the-act expression she usually got from speeders. Not even an apologetic smile. A knowing smile. Like he'd been expecting her. Like this whole thing was choreographed. "Good evening, officer," he said. His voice was low, smooth, the kind of voice that could convince you to do things you'd regret later. Was I going too fast? Miley steadied herself, cleared her throat, fell back on training and procedure because it was the only thing keeping her grounded. You were clocked at 148 miles per hour in a 55 zone. License and registration, please. He didn't move. Just kept looking at her with those impossible amber eyes, like he was reading something written on her soul. Like he could see past the uniform and the badge and the carefully constructed walls she'd built around herself. "You're cold," he said. Miley blinked. "Excuse me? Your hands are shaking. The heater in your cruiser doesn't work, does it?" He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You're also hungry. You've been eating gas station food for days because you're broke, and you're out here tonight because you need this ticket to keep your job." Her blood went cold. Actually cold. Like someone had poured ice water directly into her veins. "How the hell do you know that?" "Lucky guess." His smile widened just a fraction. He reached into his jacket, slow, deliberate, giving her plenty of time to react if she thought he was a threat, and pulled out a wallet that looked like it was made from some exotic leather she couldn't pronounce. He handed her a driver's license and registration. Drake Reeves. Age, 35. Address, Valoria Heights, penthouse 4000. Valoria, the city an hour north, where tech billionaires and venture capitalists built glass towers that scraped the sky and pretended places like Oak Haven didn't exist. Where people spent more on dinner than she made in a month. Where the cars all looked like museum pieces and the people all looked like they'd never experienced a single moment of hardship. "Step out of the vehicle, please," Miley said. "Of course." He opened the door and unfolded himself from the car. Tall, 6'3", maybe 6'4". Broad-shouldered but lean, the kind of build that came from discipline rather than vanity. He moved with liquid grace, every motion precise and controlled. Like a dancer. Or a martial artist. Or something else entirely. Miley ran him through the standard field sobriety tests. "Follow my finger with your eyes. Walk this line heel to toe. Stand on one foot for 30 seconds. He passed every single one without breaking a sweat. Didn't sway. Didn't hesitate. Didn't even look like he was trying. "You been drinking tonight, Mr. Reeves?" "Not a drop." "Where are you coming from?" "A business meeting in Portland." "At 148 miles per hour?" "I like to drive fast." He said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Like speeding through a dying town at triple-digit speeds was just a quirk, a personality trait, nothing to worry about. Miley should have arrested him on the spot. Reckless endangerment, refusal to obey traffic laws, maybe impound the car for good measure. This was exactly the kind of violation she needed. This was job security wrapped in expensive Italian leather and arrogance. But something stopped her. He was still looking at her with that unreadable expression, and she felt this was going to sound crazy. She knew it was crazy even as the thought formed, like he wanted her to arrest him. Like this whole thing was a game, and he was 3 moves ahead, and she was playing exactly the role he'd written for her. "You're getting a citation for reckless driving," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "That's a mandatory court appearance and a $5,000 fine." "Understood. And I'm considering arresting you." "Please do." Miley froze. "What?" "I said, please arrest me, Deputy Lipa." His eyes flicked to her name badge, lingering there for just a moment before returning to her face. "I think it would be interesting." That's when something inside her snapped. "You think this is funny?" She stepped closer, closing the distance between them, and she didn't care that he was a foot taller or that his car probably cost more than her entire town's annual budget. "You think you can speed through my town at 148 miles per hour and joke about it? People live here. Families. Kids who play near this road. You could have killed someone." His smile faded. For the first time since she'd pulled him over, he looked serious. Genuinely serious. The amusement drained out of his expression, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "You're right," he said quietly. "I apologize. That was reckless, and it was disrespectful to you and your community." She didn't expect that. Rich guys like him usually lawyered up immediately, or tried to bribe her with cash she couldn't legally accept. They didn't apologize. They definitely didn't sound like they meant it. "Turn around," Miley said. "Hands behind your back." He obeyed without a word. She pulled out her handcuffs, standard issue steel, nothing fancy, and snapped them around his wrists. The second the metal touched his skin, he flinched. Just a tiny flinch. A barely perceptible tensing of his shoulders.
But she saw it.
"Too tight?" she asked.
No.
His voice was strained, like he was holding something back. "It's fine." She walked him to the cruiser and put him in the back seat. He sat there, perfectly still, watching her through the metal partition like she was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. Those amber eyes tracked her every movement as she got behind the wheel and started the drive back to the station. The whole 15 minutes, she kept checking the rear-view mirror. He never looked away. Not once. Booking Drake Reeves took less than an hour, which was frustrating in ways Miley couldn't quite articulate. She wanted there to be something wrong. Some outstanding warrant, some red flag in the system that would justify the strange feeling coiling in her gut. But there was nothing. Clean record. Not even a parking ticket. His lawyer showed up in 30 minutes flat. Some shark from Valoria, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Miley's yearly salary, carrying a briefcase that looked like it belonged in a museum. The bail was posted before she'd even finished the paperwork. "You'll be notified of your court date," Miley told Drake as he collected his belongings. Wallet, keys, phone. Watch that probably cost more than her car. "I look forward to it." He paused at the door, one hand on the frame, and turned back to look at her. "Deputy Lipa, may I ask you something?" "What?" "Why did you become a cop?" Nobody had ever asked her that. Not in 4 years on the force. Not during the academy. Not even during the interview process. People assumed they knew the answer. Family tradition, or a power trip, or some naive desire to make a difference. But nobody actually asked. "Because someone has to," she said. The words came out before she could stop them, raw and honest in a way that made her feel exposed. "Because people in towns like this get forgotten. And because I'm good at it." Drake nodded slowly, like she'd just confirmed something he already knew. Like she'd passed some test she hadn't realized she was taking. "You are good at it," he said softly. "Better than you realize." Then he walked out into the night, and Miley didn't see him again for 3 days. But she felt him watching. Felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing, pressing against her skin even when she was alone. It should have scared her. Should have sent her straight to Canton to report stalking or harassment or whatever legal term applied to billionaires who made you feel like they could see straight through you. Instead, it made her feel safe. Which was the most terrifying thing of all. Miley should have known that arresting a billionaire would have consequences. Should have known that pulling over a man like Drake Reeves meant she'd just stepped into a world she didn't understand. Should have realized that amber eyes and knowing smiles and handcuffs that made him flinch were all pieces of a puzzle she couldn't see yet. Because 3 nights later, something came for Oakhaven. Something with claws, fangs, and yellow eyes that glowed in the dark like coins at the bottom of a well. Something that tore through the old Riverside mill like tissue paper and left blood smeared across the gravel parking lot in long, dragging streaks. And Drake Reeves. The man who'd smiled at her while she arrested him, who'd asked her why she became a cop like it mattered, who'd looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for centuries, was the only thing standing between her and a death she couldn't explain. Chapter 2. The call crackled through dispatch at 2:47 a.m. while I was parked behind the grocery store, halfway through cold coffee and incident reports I'd been avoiding for 3 days. All units, reports of a large animal attack at the old Riverside mill. Multiple casualties. Respond immediately. I was moving before the dispatcher finished talking. The mill squatted at the edge of town like a corpse, 6 years abandoned, all rusted girders and shattered windows and spray-painted warnings about asbestos. The kind of place teenagers used for dares and drug deals. Nobody should have been there at 3 in the morning, but someone was screaming when I pulled up high and thin, and then suddenly cut off. My headlights caught the blood first. Not drops. Not puddles.
Smears.
Long dragging streaks across the gravel like something had been pulled or dragged itself toward the entrance. Shredded fabric scattered between the tire marks. A shoe lying on its side, laces still tied, the white rubber stained dark. I radioed for backup, knowing nobody would get here in time. The main door hung off one hinge, swaying slightly in the wind coming off the river. I drew my weapon and stepped inside, flashlight cutting through darkness that felt too thick, too present. The beam found more blood. Claw marks gouged into concrete, deep parallel furrows like something massive had dug in while running full speed. The air tasted like copper and wet fur, and underneath it all, something sweet and spoiled that made my throat close. Then I heard the growl.
Low.
Guttural. Coming from the shadows near the far wall where the loading equipment used to be. Oak Haven Sheriff's Department. Show yourself. The growling got louder, closer, and then it stepped into my flashlight beam. The wolf was the size of a sedan. Rust-colored fur matted with blood and something darker. Eyes that glowed yellow like headlights, catching my beam and throwing it back amplified. When it snarled, I saw teeth the length of my fingers, curved and stained, and too many of them. I fired center mass. The shot echoed through the empty mill. The wolf stumbled backward, shook itself like a dog coming out of water, and charged. I dove behind a support beam. The creature hit the space where I'd been standing hard enough that I felt the impact through the floor. It was fast, impossibly fast for something that size, moving like liquid violence, and I was already dead. I knew I was dead. I was firing again, but the bullets weren't stopping it, and Drake Reeves stepped between us. No warning. Just suddenly there in dark jeans and a black shirt, hands loose at his sides, standing in front of a monster like he was blocking someone's view at a movie theater. Get back. The words ripped out of my throat. He didn't move. The wolf lunged, and Drake caught it by the throat with both hands. Bare hands. No gloves, no weapon, just his fingers closing around fur and muscle, and then he lifted it. Lifted it off the ground like it weighed nothing, like he was picking up a puppy, and slammed it into the concrete hard enough that the floor cracked. The sound was enormous, bone and cement, and something wet breaking all at once. The wolf yelped. Actually yelped. Then it scrambled backward through a window frame, glass exploding outward, and disappeared into the darkness beyond. Drake turned to face me, and his eyes were glowing. Not reflecting. Not catching the light. Glowing. That same amber I'd seen in his car, but brighter now, burning in the shadows, and I understood with perfect chemical clarity that I was looking at something that wasn't human and never had been. Are you hurt?
His voice was calm.
Conversational. Like he hadn't just thrown a monster through a wall. I couldn't answer. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my gun. Miley. He took a step closer, and I raised the weapon without thinking. He stopped immediately, palms out. Are you hurt? What are you? Something moved across his face. Not fear, not anger. Something softer and more complicated. Not here. I'll explain everything. But not here. What the hell are you? Not here. His car was outside. Still running, lights on, which made no sense because how had he gotten here before me? I hadn't seen another vehicle on the road. Hadn't heard an engine. He opened the passenger door, like we were going to dinner. Get in. I'm not getting in your car. That wolf is part of a pack. There are more coming. You're not safe here. I don't run from. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to survive long enough for me to explain why you're in danger. The way he said it, flat, factual, like he was reading incident statistics, made me listen. I got in the car. He drove fast but controlled, both hands on the wheel, eyes checking mirrors constantly. We were back in Oak Haven in minutes. He pulled up to the closed diner and parked under a streetlight, killed the engine, and turned to face me. I'm not human. I'm a werewolf. My name is Drake Reeves, and I'm the alpha of the Kestrel Prime Pack. I'm 423 years old. I control most of the infrastructure in Valoria, and I've been watching over Oak Haven for 15 years because it sits on the edge of my territory, and I made a promise to keep it safe. I stared at him, tried to process the words. failed completely. You're insane. I wish. He exhaled slowly. The creature that attacked you is from Iron Hollow.
Rival pack.
They're trying to expand into my territory, and they're using your town as a staging ground because humans don't believe in us. They think you'll blame bears or mountain lions. They think you're easy targets. Werewolves aren't real. You saw what I did in that mill. That was adrenaline. Or PCP.
Or.
He shifted. His bones cracked.
Loud.
Like breaking lumber. His body twisted in ways bodies shouldn't twist, clothes tearing, skin rippling, and then a massive black wolf with amber eyes was sitting in the driver's seat where Drake Reeves had been 1 second before. I screamed. Grabbed the door handle. It was locked. The wolf looked at me with eyes that were still somehow his eyes, intelligent and sad and very aware, and then it shifted back. Bones cracking again, body reforming, and Drake was there breathing hard, eyes still glowing faintly, shirt hanging in tatters.
I'm sorry.
But you needed to see. I couldn't go home. Couldn't think about sleep or paperwork or anything resembling normal life. Drake drove us to a diner 2 towns over and bought coffee I didn't drink and eggs I couldn't eat and sat across from me in silence until I could finally speak. Why me? Why are you telling me this?
He was quiet for a long time.
When he answered, his voice was different.
Softer.
More human than I'd heard it. Because you're my mate. You're what? True mate. It's rare. Once in a lifetime, if you're lucky. I recognized you the moment I saw you on that highway. Your scent, your presence. My wolf has been waiting 400 years just to meet you. I laughed. It came out broken and sharp. So, we're soulmates because you're a magic dog. I'm saying I would die to protect you. That every instinct I have is screaming at me to keep you safe, to provide for you, to make sure you never feel alone or afraid again. I'm saying I've lived for centuries, and I've never felt anything like what I feel when I'm near you. I don't need protecting. I know. That's why I'm telling you instead of just doing it. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion carved into his face, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched white-knuckled on the table like he was physically holding himself back from reaching for me. This wasn't some predator playing games. This was someone terrified I'd run, and knowing he couldn't stop me if I did. I need time. Take all the time you need. And I need you to stay away from me. Pain flickered across his face. Raw and immediate. If that's what you want. It is. He paid the bill. Drove me back to Oak Haven in silence thick enough to choke on. When he pulled up outside my apartment building, he turned off the engine but didn't look at me. The Iron Hollow pack won't stop. They'll come for you to get to me. Please be careful. Then he was gone. Just drove away. Left me standing in the parking lot at dawn with my gun still holstered and my hands still shaking and my entire understanding of reality shattered into pieces I couldn't fit back together.
Y uccide l'istana.
Because 2 days later they burned down my apartment building. And Drake Reeves became the only thing standing between me and a war I never asked to be part of. Chapter 3. I woke up choking. Smoke thick as oil pouring under my apartment door, filling the room, turning the air black. The fire alarm was screaming, had been screaming, I realized, for God knows how long, and through the wall I could hear Mrs. Castellano from 3B shouting for her daughter. I rolled out of bed, hit the floor, stayed low like they taught us in training, grabbed my phone off the nightstand. Badge.
Gun.
The go bag I kept in the closet because once you've been a cop long enough you learn to always have an exit strategy. The smoke was so thick I couldn't see the door. Had to feel my way along the wall, fingers scraping paint, lungs burning, eyes streaming. The hallway was chaos. Families stumbling through darkness, kids crying, someone's dog barking hysterically. Mr. Chun from 4A was carrying his elderly mother. The college kid from 2D was trying to help his roommate, who couldn't stop coughing. I grabbed Mrs. Castellano's arm when she came out of her apartment, looking lost and terrified. Stay with me, I said. We're getting out. The stairwell was packed. Bodies pressed together, everyone pushing down, someone fell, and I hauled them up by their shirt, Kept moving, kept pushing, my throat closing up from the smoke, but I couldn't stop, couldn't slow down because people were counting on me. We burst out onto the street just as the second-floor windows exploded. Glass and flame erupting outward in a wave of heat that knocked people backward. I shielded misses. Castellano with my body, felt shards rain down on my back, and when I looked up, the entire west side of the building was engulfed. Firefighters were already there. Paramedics loading people onto gurneys. I stood on the curb in pajama pants and a tank top, bare feet on cold pavement, and watched everything I owned burn. That's when I smelled it. Gasoline. Sharp and chemical underneath the smoke. Not the electrical smell of melted wiring or the sweet smell of burning wood. Accelerant. This wasn't an accident. I pushed through the crowd toward the fire chief, showed him my badge. Sir, I need to report. Deputy Lipa. He turned, face carved with shadows in the firelight. Arson units already been called. We found 3 points of origin. Commercial-grade accelerant used. This was deliberate. My stomach went cold. Any casualties? 1 body so far. Second floor, Unit 2C. Haven't ID'd them yet, but the burn pattern suggests they were already dead when the fire started. Unit 2C. Directly below mine. Someone had burned down my building. Killed my neighbor. Left me a message I was only beginning to understand. The arson investigators found the rest 2 hours later. Claw marks. Dozens of them gouged into the walls of the stairwell leading up to my floor. Deep parallel furrows in concrete that shouldn't have been possible to make without industrial equipment. They clustered around my apartment door. Scratches so deep they'd gone through the steel core and into the wood beneath. And spray painted on the back wall where the dumpsters used to be, 10 feet high in dripping red. Tell Reeves we're coming. The police photographed it, wrote it up as gang activity, started talking about tagging crews and territorial disputes. I didn't correct them. Didn't tell them what I knew. Because what was I supposed to say? That werewolves had burned down my building? That I was caught in the middle of a supernatural war I didn't understand? I was standing in the parking lot at dawn, still in my pajamas, still smelling like smoke and gasoline and fear, when the Rolls-Royce pulled up. Drake got out like he'd driven through the night, without stopping. Shirt wrinkled. Hair falling across his forehead. Eyes wild and golden even in the growing light. Are you hurt? He was moving toward me before the car door fully closed. How did you know? I have people watching you. The second the fire started, they called me. I've been driving for 3 hours. He stopped just out of reach, hands clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from touching me. Are you hurt? I fine. You're not fine. You're standing in a parking lot covered in ash because Iron Hollow just tried to kill you. They didn't try to kill me. They killed someone else and left me a message.
Exactly.
They're escalating.
They know who you are now.
They know you matter to me. You can't stay here. I'm not running. This isn't about running.
Imakop, Drake.
I don't abandon my town because things get dangerous. This isn't dangerous. This is a death sentence. He gestured at the smoking ruins behind me. They burned down your home, killed your neighbor, left a declaration of war painted on the wall. And that's just the opening move. They'll come for you again. Next time they won't leave a message. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him I could protect myself, that I'd faced down violent drunks and armed robbery suspects and domestic abusers with knives. But I looked at the building, at the blackened windows and collapsed roof and emergency vehicles still spraying water on smoldering wreckage, and something inside me cracked. Where would I even go? My voice came out broken. That was everything I had. With me. The hotel was in Valoria. 20 minutes outside Oak Haven, situated on a tree-lined street that looked like it belonged in a movie about old money and quiet power. Boutique place with a marble lobby, fresh orchids on every surface, staff in tailored uniforms who called Drake by name. He took me up to a suite on the top floor. Opened the door onto a space that cost more per night than my monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked antique and probably was, a bathroom bigger than my entire apartment had been. He set my duffel bag on the bed. The only thing I'd managed to grab before the building burned.
Everything else was gone.
You're safe here. I own the building. My people are stationed on every floor. Iron Hollow won't touch you. I can't afford this. You're not paying. Drake.
Miley.
He turned to face me, and the exhaustion in his eyes was overwhelming. Dark circles underneath. Lines around his mouth I hadn't noticed before. Please. Let me do this. Let me keep you safe. I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him I didn't need his money or his protection or his guilt-driven charity. But I was standing in borrowed pajamas that smelled like smoke, holding a duffel bag with 3 changes of clothes and a Glock, and I had nowhere else to go. One night. Then I figure out what's next. One night. He moved toward the door. Stopped with his hand on the handle. If you need anything, food, clothes, just someone to talk to, call me. My number's programmed in the room phone. But if you want me to leave you alone, I will. I promise.
He left.
I stood in the center of that absurdly beautiful room and felt the weight of the last 48 hours crash down on me all at once.
My home was gone.
My neighbor was dead. I was being hunted by creatures I didn't believe existed a week ago. And the only person keeping me alive was a 400-year-old werewolf who claimed I was his soulmate. I walked into the bathroom. All marble and gold fixtures and a shower big enough for 4 people, turned the water as hot as it would go, and stood under the spray until my skin was red and my fingers were wrinkled, and I couldn't tell anymore if I was crying or if it was just the water running down my face. When I came out wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything I'd ever owned, there was food on the table. Fresh croissants.
Fruit.
A coffee that smelled expensive. Clothes laid out on the bed, jeans in my size, a soft sweater, underwear still in the package, socks, boots that looked like they'd actually fit. And a note in Drake's handwriting on hotel stationery. If you need anything, call me. If you want me to leave you alone, I will. But please know, I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone in this. I sat on the edge of the bed holding that note and cried. Not because I'd lost everything. Not because I was scared or angry or overwhelmed. But because for the first time in my entire life, someone was taking care of me without asking for anything in return. No strings attached. Just quiet protection offered freely because he thought I mattered. And I didn't know what to do with that. I ate the food because I was starving. Put on the clothes because I couldn't walk around in a towel. Sat by the window and watched the city wake up. Cars filling the streets, people walking dogs. Normal life continuing while mine fell apart. My phone buzzed. Text from the station. Sheriff Canton wanted to see me first thing tomorrow morning. Mandatory meeting. All deputies required to attend. I texted back confirmation and tried not to think about how I'd explained showing up in borrowed clothes smelling like hotel shampoo. Tried not to think about how Drake had known my size. Had known what I needed before I did. Had moved heaven and earth to make sure I was safe while I was still processing what safety even meant anymore. The suite had a second bedroom. I found it by accident. Door tucked into an alcove near the kitchen area. Inside was a bed already made, nightstand with a lamp, closet with hangers. Everything neutral and clean and impersonal, like he deliberately avoided making it feel like his space. But on the nightstand was another note. In case you don't want to sleep in the main room. No cameras anywhere in this suite. Complete privacy. I promise. He'd thought of everything. Down to making sure I knew I wasn't being watched. That I had space to breathe and think and exist without feeling trapped. I lay down on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of a world where werewolves were real and alphas owned hotels, and someone I'd met 4 days ago was willing to burn his entire life down to keep me safe. Sleep didn't come. I thought one night in that hotel would be enough. That I'd wake up clear-headed and figure out my next move. Find a new apartment. Go back to work. Rebuild my life piece by piece the way I always had. I was wrong. Because at 6:30 the next morning, my phone rang. Dispatch. Voice shaking. Deputy Lipa, you need to come to the station immediately. Sheriff Canton is dead. Killed in his home sometime last night. Looks like an animal attack. I sat up, heart pounding. What kind of animal? That's the thing. Nobody knows. The responding officers are saying it doesn't match any known predator in the region. We need all available personnel on site now. I hung up, pulled on my boots, walked out of that beautiful suite into the hallway, and knew with perfect clarity that everything was about to get worse. Sheriff Canton was dead, and I was about to become the only thing standing between Oak Haven and total annihilation. Chapter 4. Sheriff Canton died of a heart attack. That's what the coroner wrote on the death certificate. Natural causes. Cardiac arrest. 58 years old. History of high blood pressure. Stress of the job finally caught up with him. That's what they told the town. But I saw his body at the funeral home before they closed the casket. Saw the bruises around his throat, dark purple finger marks that circled his neck like a collar. Saw the burst blood vessels in his eyes. The defensive wounds on his hands where he'd tried to claw something off him. Canton didn't have a heart attack. He was strangled. And whoever did it was strong enough to crush his windpipe with one hand. I stood over his casket in my dress uniform, buttons polished, badge gleaming, hands folded behind my back so nobody could see them shaking, and made a promise to a dead man. I was going to find out who killed him, and I was going to make them pay in ways that would make headlines. The funeral was packed. Every cop in 3 counties standing at attention in their dress blues. Half the town crowded into folding chairs on the cemetery lawn. Reporters from Valoria with cameras and microphones covering the tragic loss of a beloved small-town sheriff who dedicated 30 years to keeping Oak Haven safe. I stood in the back row with the other deputies, jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached, trying not to scream at the hypocrisy of it all. Canton had been a bastard. Everyone knew it. He drank on duty, covered up complaints, made life hell for anyone who questioned him. But now he was dead and suddenly he was a hero. Tease when I saw him. A man I didn't recognize standing across the cemetery near the old oak tree.
Tall.
Scarred face. Wearing a leather jacket and jeans to a funeral where everyone else was in black suits. He was watching me with eyes that caught the afternoon light wrong. Yellow and bright and completely focused. Not amber like Drake's. Yellow.
Cold. Predatory.
I started walking toward him. Slowly at first, then faster, weaving between headstones and flower arrangements. He smiled. Slow and cruel like he'd been waiting for me to notice, and disappeared into the crowd of mourners. By the time I reached the oak tree he was gone. But the smell lingered. Wet fur and something rotten. I knew that smell now. 2 days after the funeral, the county board held an emergency meeting in the courthouse basement. Gray walls. Fluorescent lights. 6 people sitting around a table deciding the future of Oak Haven like they were picking a restaurant for dinner. They needed a new sheriff. Fast. The town was falling apart. Vandalism, arson, reports of animal attacks that didn't make sense. They needed someone to stabilize things before the state got involved. And somehow, despite being 28 years old with 4 years of experience and 0 political connections, they chose me. Interim Sheriff Miley Lipa. I should have been happy. This was the job security I'd been desperate for since the academy. The promotion I'd worked toward through every overtime shift and double patrol. The respect I'd fought for every single day in a department that treated female deputies like temporary inconveniences. Instead, I felt sick. Because I knew exactly why they'd picked me. I was cheap. I was expendable. I was young enough and inexperienced enough that when Oak Haven imploded on my watch, and it would, they all knew it would, they could blame the rookie who was in over her head. The girl who couldn't handle the pressure. The diversity hire who never should have been promoted in the first place. I took the oath in an empty courtroom with 3 county officials and a court reporter who looked bored.
No ceremony. No congratulations.
No press conference announcing the historic appointment of the youngest sheriff in county history. Just a hand on a Bible and words I barely heard over the ringing in my ears. When it was over, they handed me Canton's badge, still warm from being in someone's pocket, and walked out without another word. I sat alone in that courtroom holding the badge of a dead man and wondered how long I had before they killed me too. 48 hours, as it turned out. The call came through at 9 p.m. while I was at the station going through Canton's files, trying to find anything that might explain why someone had murdered him. Dispatch. Voice shaking so badly, I almost couldn't understand the words. Sheriff, we have a situation at the high school. Multiple reports of animals attacking the building. Witnesses saying wolves. Big ones. We need units on scene immediately. I was moving before she finished talking. Grabbed my weapon, radioed for backup, hit the lights and drove faster than I'd ever driven in my life, watching Oak Haven blur past the windows while my heart hammered against my ribs. The high school sat on the north edge of town. Single-story brick building, surrounded by fields, parking lot that could hold 500 cars during football games. When I pulled up, that parking lot was chaos. People running, cars trying to leave all at once. Someone screaming. The front windows were shattered. Glass everywhere. And through those broken windows I could see movement. Large shapes moving fast through the darkened hallways. I got out of the car with my gun drawn and my radio clipped to my shoulder and 3 other deputies pulling up behind me. Sheriff, what are we dealing with? Martinez, one of the senior deputies. Good cop. Steady hands. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's still inside. We moved in formation toward the main entrance. The doors had been ripped off their hinges, literally torn away from the frame and thrown 15 feet across the parking lot. The smell hit me before we got inside.
Vet fur. Blood.
That same rotting smell I'd noticed at the cemetery. The hallway was destroyed. Lockers torn open, contents scattered. Fluorescent lights hanging from the ceiling by their wires. Claw marks gouged into the linoleum floor in long parallel furrows. And then we reached the gymnasium. The doors were open. Inside, the space was demolished. Bleachers tore apart. Basketball hoops ripped down. The wooden floor scored with claw marks, so deep they'd gone through the varnish into the raw wood beneath. And spray painted across the center of the court in letters 6 feet high. We own this town now. I stood there surrounded by wreckage and felt something shift inside me. Not fear. Not panic.
Rage.
Pure burning rage that started in my chest and spread through my entire body until my hands were shaking and I could taste metal in my mouth. They'd killed Canton, burned down my home, terrorized my town, and now they were leaving messages like this was some kind of game. Martinez was talking. Something about securing the perimeter and calling for backup and processing the scene. I barely heard him. I pulled out my phone, found the number Drake had programmed in before he left me at the hotel. Hit call. He answered on the first ring. Miley, I need your help. My voice came out steady.
Cold.
And I need the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more half explanations. I need to know exactly what I'm fighting and how to kill it. Silence on the other end. Then, meet me at the Valoria penthouse in 1 hour. I'll tell you everything. I hung up, turned to Martinez and the other deputies standing in the wreckage looking lost and terrified. Lock down the town. Nobody in or out without clearance. And someone get me every file we have on arson, vandalism, and animal attacks from the last 6 months. I want dates, locations, witness statements, everything. Martinez blinked. Sheriff, what's going on? I looked at the message on the gym floor. At the claw marks that couldn't have come from any normal animal. At the fear in my deputy's eyes. War, I said. And we're not losing. I drove to Valoria alone. Left Martinez in charge of the crime scene and the lockdown and the terrified parents who kept calling asking if their kids were safe. The penthouse was in the financial district. Top 3 floors of a glass tower that looked like it cost more than Oak Haven's entire annual budget. Private elevator. Security that let me through with 1 phone call. Doors that opened onto a space that shouldn't have existed outside magazines about people who owned islands. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern art on the walls. Furniture that was probably older than I was and worth more than my car. And Drake standing on the balcony with his back to me, hands in his pockets, staring out at the skyline like he was looking for something specific. "Thank you for coming." He didn't turn around. "I'm not here to chat. I'm here because people in my town are terrified. My predecessor is dead, and I need to know what I'm up against. No more games. No more protecting me from the truth. Just facts." He turned slowly. His eyes were glowing faintly in the darkness. That amber color that meant his wolf was close to the surface. "You're up against Michael Corvin, Alpha of Iron Hollow. He's been trying to take my territory for 10 years, and he's finally decided that the best way to hurt me is to destroy everything I care about." "Why does he think Oak Haven matters to you? You said you watch over it, but it's just one town in your territory." Drake's jaw tightened, muscles flexing under his skin. "Because you're there." My breath caught. "He knows you're my mate. Probably knew within hours of me meeting you. Alphas can sense when another alpha has found their true mate. And he knows that if he kills you, it will break me in ways no battle or territory loss ever could. He's not attacking Oak Haven. He's attacking you to get to me. So I'm bait. You're everything." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off his body. "Miley, I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to meet you on that highway, or to feel this bond, or to put you in danger just by existing near you. But I will not let Michael hurt you. I will burn his entire pack to the ground and salt the earth where they stood before I let him touch you." I should have been scared. Should have run. Should have told him this was insane, and I wanted nothing to do with supernatural wars or alpha politics or any of it. Instead, I felt power settle into my bones like it had been waiting there all along. "Then teach me how to fight them.
How to kill them.
Because I'm not hiding and I'm not running, and I'm sure as hell not sitting in your penthouse waiting for you to solve this. If they want a war, they're getting one." Drake smiled, fierce and proud, and something else I couldn't name. "Okay. But first we need to get you out of Oak Haven."
"What? No."
"I'm not abandoning my town. You're not abandoning anyone. You're regrouping." He pulled out his phone and showed me a map with red dots scattered across it. "Michael's pack is operating out of an industrial zone 15 miles south of Oak Haven. Abandoned warehouses. Easy access to the river. Perfect staging ground. If we're going to stop them, we need to hit them where they live. And to do that, I need you trained, armed, and ready to fight." I looked at the map, at the sheer number of dots, at the scale of what we were facing. "How long do we have?" 2 days. Maybe 3. After that, Michael will stop sending scouts and come himself. And when he does, he won't leave survivors. Then we have 2 days to end this." Drake looked at me, really looked, eyes searching my face like he was seeing me for the first time, and something shifted in his expression. Respect. Recognition. Something deeper. "You're going to make one hell of an alpha's mate," he said quietly. "I'm not your mate yet, Reeves."
"No."
He smiled. "But you will be." That night, Drake took me deeper into his world than I'd ever been before. He drove us to a compound outside Valoria. High walls, armed guards, buildings that looked like they'd been standing for centuries. His pack was waiting inside. 30 wolves. Some in human form, some already shifted. All of them watching me with eyes that glowed in the darkness.
Testing me.
Judging whether I was worth protecting or just dead weight their alpha had gotten sentimental about. Drake introduced me to his second-in-command. A woman named Vera with silver hair and scars across her face who looked at me like she was deciding whether to shake my hand or rip my throat out. "She's human," Vera said flatly. "She's mine," Drake replied. "And anyone who touches her answers to me." The pack accepted that.
Barely.
But it was enough. They showed me weapons I didn't know existed. Silver blades forged specifically to kill werewolves. Bullets tipped with silver that could drop a wolf in one shot. Traps designed to hold creatures strong enough to tear through steel. And Drake taught me how to use all of it. We trained in a warehouse on the compound grounds. Hand-to-hand combat first, teaching me how to move against something faster and stronger than me. How to use momentum and precision instead of force. how to find weak points and exploit them before my opponent could react. Then weapons. Silver knife against practice dummies. Loading magazines with silver rounds. Assembling traps while timed. Over and over until my hands moved automatically and I could field strip a weapon blindfolded. Somewhere between the training and the terror and the sweat and the exhaustion, I started to realize something. I wasn't just fighting for Oakhaven anymore. I was fighting for him. For Drake and his pack, and this strange, brutal world where loyalty meant something and promises were kept, and someone actually thought I was worth protecting. And that scared me more than the wolves ever could.
Chapter 5.
Drake's penthouse had a lower level I hadn't seen before. He led me to an elevator hidden behind a panel in the kitchen wall. No buttons inside, just a biometric scanner that read his palm print and dropped us 3 floors down into darkness. When the doors opened, I stepped into a bunker that looked like it belonged in a military black site. Concrete walls reinforced with steel. Surveillance monitors covering every angle of Valoria and Oakhaven. Weapon racks lining one wall, guns, blades, things I didn't have names for. And standing in the center of the room, watching me with eyes that glowed in the dim light, were 6 people who definitely weren't human. Miley, meet the Kestrel Prime Inner Circle, Drake said. A woman stepped forward first. Mid-20s, athletic build, dark skin, braids pulled back tight. When she looked at me, her eyes flashed amber, and I felt the weight of her assessment like a physical thing. Zara. She offered her hand. Strong grip. Calluses on her palms. Second in command. Also the one who's been keeping you alive for the past week without you knowing it. What? You didn't think it was coincidence that every time Iron Hollow got close to you, something scared them off? She grinned, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. I've been shadowing you since the mill. Rooftops mostly. Sometimes your back seat, when you weren't looking. You've been in my car? 4 times. You really should lock your doors. Next was a guy who looked like he'd walked off the set of a biker movie. Leather jacket worn soft with age, tattoos covering both arms, cocky smirk that suggested he knew exactly how dangerous he was.
Trent.
Enforcement. I handle problems that need permanent solutions. What kind of problems? His smile widened. The kind that stopped breathing. A quieter man stepped forward. Older, maybe early 50s, gray threading through dark hair, wire-rimmed glasses that made him look more accountant than werewolf. Elliot. I run the business side. Logistics, strategy, making sure Drake doesn't do anything catastrophically stupid. That's a full-time job, Zara muttered. 60 hours a week minimum, Elliot agreed. The last 2 were twins, man and woman with identical sharp features, pale skin, and unsettling synchronized movements. They stepped forward together, spoke together, their voices overlapping perfectly. Rowan and Sky. Trackers. We find things that don't want to be found. I looked around at 6 werewolves who could probably tear me apart without breaking a sweat, who'd been operating in the shadows of my life without me ever knowing they existed. Drake gestured at them. These are the people I trust with my life. And now I'm trusting them with yours. Zara crossed her arms. So what now, boss? We teaching the human to fight, or just keeping her locked up here until this blows over? We're teaching her to survive, Drake said. And then we're teaching her to win. Silver kills werewolves. Not injures. Not slows down.
Kills.
Drake explained it while laying out an arsenal on the bunker's main table. Guns, knives, even brass knuckles plated with the stuff. Something about the metal disrupts our healing factor, he said, handling a wicked-looking blade with casual familiarity. Poisons the blood. Normal wounds close in minutes. Silver wounds? They fester.
Spread.
A bullet to the leg might take us down for days. A bullet to the heart or head ends it permanently. He handed me a knife. 8 inches of curved silver blade, black handle wrapped in leather, perfectly balanced. The metal caught the light and threw it back cold and bright. This was made by a packsmith in Montana. Commissioned it 15 years ago and never thought I'd need to give it to someone else. It never needs sharpening. The balance is perfect. And it'll drop a wolf in seconds if you hit the right spot. I tested the weight. Felt it settle into my palm like it belonged there. Where's the right spot? Drake shifted, not fully, just enough that his eyes blazed gold and his canines extended past his lower lip. Heart, throat, or spine. Anywhere else you'll just make us angry. Us. He shifted back, bones cracking softly.
Them.
You'll just make them angry. Trent tossed me a leather shoulder holster. Wear this under your jacket. Practice drawing until you can do it asleep, drunk, and upside down. Because when Iron Hollow comes for you, you won't have time to think. How long do I have? 48 hours. Maybe less. I strapped on the holster. The weight of the knife against my ribs felt foreign and necessary all at once. Then, let's get started. We trained for 12 hours straight. Zara handled hand-to-hand combat. She moved like water flowing around obstacles, fast, fluid, always 3 moves ahead. I thought I was decent in a fight after 4 years of academy training and real-world experience. She dismantled that illusion in under 30 seconds. You're fighting like a human, she said, circling me on the training mats. Trying to overpower your opponent. That won't work against wolves. We're stronger, faster, built for violence. You need to be smarter. She lunged. I blocked. She swept my legs and I hit the mat hard enough to knock the wind out of my lungs. Use momentum. Use angles. Make us commit to a move and then exploit the opening. She offered me a hand up. Again. We went again.
And again.
And again until my body moved on instinct, until I stopped thinking and started reacting, until I managed to slip past her guard and put my practice knife against her throat. She grinned. Better. You might actually survive this. Trent took over weapons training. Made me draw the silver knife 100 times until my hands cramped. Then 100 more. Taught me angles of attack, how to guard vitals while moving forward, how to read an opponent's body language for tells. Wolves telegraph before they strike, he said. Shoulders drop. Weight shifts. Eyes track the target. Learn to read that, and you can dodge before they commit. He shifted partially, claws extending, muscles bulging, and attacked. I saw the shoulder drop. Dodged left. Got my knife up and scored a shallow cut across his ribs before he could adjust. He looked down at the blood, then at me.
Damn.
You're a fast learner.
I'm motivated.
Good. Because motivated is what keeps you breathing. Rowan and Sky handled tracking. Took me outside to the compound grounds and taught me how to read the landscape like a story written in dirt and displaced air. Claw marks tell you size and speed, Rowan said, pointing at gouges in a tree trunk. Deep means heavy. Spaced far apart means running. Scent trails fade, but not evenly, Sky added. Fresh is sharp. Old is soft. Learn the difference, and you know how close they are. They showed me territorial markers, scratch patterns on trees, scent posts, the subtle ways wolves claimed space and warned others away. Taught me how to move through forest without leaving obvious signs, how to use wind direction, how to think like prey trying to avoid predators. By the time the sun started rising, painting the sky orange and pink beyond the compound walls, I was bruised, exhausted, and covered in sweat that had dried and soaked through my clothes 3 times over. But I was also ready. Or, as ready as a human could be. Walking into a supernatural war. Drake found me on the penthouse balcony after I'd showered and changed into clean clothes. He handed me a bottle of water and leaned against the railing beside me. Both of us watching Valoria wake up. Cars filling streets, people walking dogs. Normal life continuing while we prepared for violence. You did well today, he said quietly. I got my ass kicked for 12 straight hours. By some of the best fighters in North America. That's not losing. That's learning at an accelerated pace under pressure. He took a drink from his own water bottle. Most humans would have quit after the first hour. You went 12 without complaint.
I'm motivated.
I noticed. He was quiet for a moment. When this is over, when Michael is dealt with, you'll have a choice to make. What choice? Whether you want to stay in this world. Pack politics, territorial disputes, living with the knowledge that monsters are real, and some of them are in your bed. I turned to look at him. Really look. At the exhaustion carved into his face, the tension in his shoulders that never fully relaxed, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant vigilance. When's the last time you actually slept? I asked. 48 hours ago. Maybe 50. Drake. I can't sleep when you're in danger. He said it simply, matter of fact, like he was commenting on the weather. My wolf won't let me. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to keep you close, to guard you personally, to make sure nothing gets within 100 yards of you, without going through me first. That's not sustainable. I know. But that's what the mate bond does. Makes you irrational, reckless, willing to burn the world down for one person. He ran a hand through his hair, messing it up in ways that shouldn't have been attractive but were. When I saw your apartment burning, when I got the call about the school, Miley, I fought in wars. Survived battles that should have killed me.
That should friends die.
Lost territory. But nothing has ever terrified me the way the thought of losing you does. I turned to face him fully. Put my water bottle down on the railing. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. But when this is over, when Michael is dead and you're safe, you'll have a choice. You can walk away. Go back to your life. Find someone human. Someone who doesn't come with 4 centuries of baggage and enemies who want him dead. And if I don't want to walk away, his breath caught. Then you'd be choosing a very complicated life. I became a cop in a dying town because I wanted to help people nobody else cared about, I said. I arrested a billionaire doing 148 in a 55 because it was the right thing to do even if it cost me everything. I don't make easy choices, Drake. I make the right ones. And what's the right choice here? I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his body, to see the gold flecks in those amber eyes, to smell pine and smoke and something uniquely him underneath. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know I'm not running. And I know that whatever happens with Iron Hollow, we face it together. Something shifted in his expression. Relief washing over features that had been tight with worry. Hope flickering to life, where there'd only been resignation. Together, he repeated softly. Then his phone buzzed. The change was instantaneous. Drake went from tired and hopeful to rigid and dangerous in the space between heartbeats. He pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, and I watched his entire body go predator still. What is it? I asked. Michael just sent a message.
His voice had gone flat.
Cold. The voice of someone who'd killed before and would again. He's coming to Oak Haven tonight. With his entire pack. And he's challenging me to single combat. My stomach dropped. What happens if you refuse? He burns the town to the ground. Kills everyone in it. Makes an example out of Oak Haven that other territories will remember for generations. And if you accept, winner takes all. Territory, resources, pack loyalty. Drake looked at me, and his eyes were glowing. If I lose, you become his property. Along with everyone else I've been protecting. Then you can't lose. Michael's been an alpha for 60 years. He's ruthless, experienced, and he's not bound by the same honor codes I follow. He'll fight dirty. Use every advantage. Try to break me psychologically before the physical fight even starts. So fight dirtier. Drake almost smiled. You're starting to sound like a wolf. Good. I grabbed my jacket off the chair. Checked that the silver knife was secure in its holster. Because we're ending this tonight. The drive back to Oak Haven felt like descending into hell. Drake called in every favor, every alliance, every resource he'd accumulated over 4 centuries. By the time we reached the town limits, we had a plan, positioning, backup strategies, contingencies for when things went wrong. But plans don't survive first contact with the enemy. And Michael had been planning this war for far longer than we realized. Chapter 6. We had 4 hours before sunset. 4 hours to evacuate 3,000 people from a town that was about to become a war zone without causing mass panic or getting questions I couldn't answer. I stood in the sheriff's station surrounded by my deputies, Martinez, Torres, Chun, all of them good cops, all of them completely unprepared for what was coming, and made the hardest call of my career. Gas leak, I said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. We're issuing a mandatory evacuation for the entire town effective immediately. Tell everyone to head north to Valoria. The county has emergency shelters set up at the convention center. Deputy Torres frowned. Sheriff, I didn't hear anything about a gas leak. When did the county engineers? That's because it's classified information. They detected a major line rupture under Main Street 2 hours ago. If it ignites, the explosion could level half the town. I held his gaze without blinking. We have 4 hours to get every single person out.
No exceptions.
Move everyone.
Now.
They didn't question me after that. Couldn't afford to with a ticking clock and 3,000 lives on the line. Within 2 hours, we had caravans of cars streaming north on Highway 12. Families throwing essentials into trucks. Elderly neighbors helping each other pack. Kids confused but obedient, clutching stuffed animals and asking questions their parents couldn't answer. I stood at the town limits with Torres, directing traffic, making sure every single vehicle got through, mentally counting faces and praying I hadn't missed anyone. Mrs. Castellano from 3B, the woman I'd helped down the stairs during the apartment fire, stopped her car beside me. She rolled down the window, and I could see her daughter in the back seat, arms full of photo albums. "You're not coming, are you?" she asked quietly. "I'm the sheriff. I stay until everyone's safe." She reached through the window and squeezed my hand with fingers that were thin and strong and had probably squeezed 1,000 hands in comfort over her 70-some years. "You're a good girl, Miley. Your mama would be proud of what you've become." My throat tightened. "Thank you." She drove away, and I watched the taillights disappear into the growing darkness, watched the red glow fade until it was just another pair of lights in a long line heading towards safety I'd promised them, but couldn't guarantee. By the time the sun started its final descent behind the mountains, Oak Haven was a ghost town. Empty streets like movie sets. Dark windows. Silence, so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. No cars.
No voices.
No dogs barking or kids playing or the normal sounds of life that had always filled these streets. Drake found me standing in the middle of Main Street outside the hardware store, holding my silver knife, staring at my reflection in the dark windows. "Everyone's out," I said without turning around. "Good." He came to stand beside me, both of us looking at the abandoned buildings. "Then it's just us and them." "How many is he bringing?" 40, maybe 50 wolves. Intel suggests he's bringing his entire pack to make a statement. I did the math. Drake's inner circle was 6 people. Plus him. 7 against 50. Those are terrible odds. "Yes," Drake agreed. "Which is why we're not fighting them head-on." He pulled out a tactical map of Oak Haven and laid it on the hood of my cruiser. The paper crinkled in the evening breeze. Michael expects a traditional duel. Alpha versus Alpha. Packs watching from the sidelines, honor and ceremony, and all the old rules. He thinks I'm bound by 4 centuries of tradition. Drake's smile was cold and sharp. "But you taught me something, Miley. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy one. Sometimes you have to break every rule to protect the people you love." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we're going to turn this town into a kill box. We're going to use every advantage, technology, terrain, surprise. And we're going to make Iron Hollow regret ever stepping foot in my territory." We had 90 minutes before they arrived. 90 minutes to turn a small town into a death trap sophisticated enough to take down 50 werewolves. Zara and Trent took the old mill, rigged it with explosives packed with silver shrapnel, set up remote detonators, turned the place where I'd almost died into a weapon that would take out anyone stupid enough to use it for cover. They worked with the efficiency of people who'd done this before, placing charges at structural weak points, calculating blast radius, making sure the explosion would funnel inward rather than out toward the residential areas. Rowan and Sky set up sniper positions on the tallest buildings, the water tower, the church steeple, the old grain elevator. Rifles with silver bullets, night vision scopes, clear lines of sight down every major street. They moved like ghosts, invisible even when I knew where to look. Elliot coordinated drone surveillance from a mobile command post in the back of a van parked behind the pharmacy. Thermal imaging motion sensors, 3 drones in the air tracking Iron Hollow's approach from different angles. He had tablets spread across a makeshift desk, fingers flying over keyboards, updating everyone's positions in real time. And me? I went to the high school. The place they'd marked as theirs. The place they'd destroyed to send a message. The place they thought they owned. I stood in the ruined gymnasium with spray-painted threats still visible on the floor and waited. The building creaked around me. Broken glass crunched under my boots. The smell of old smoke lingered. Drake joined me 10 minutes before sunset. He was dressed all in black, tactical gear that looked military-grade, silver-reinforced gloves, knives strapped to his thighs and chest, and probably places I couldn't see. He looked like death itself had put on human skin and decided to walk among the living. "You don't have to be here," he said quietly. "You could be in Valoria with the others. Safe. Protected. I'm exactly where I need to be. Miley, I'm not arguing about this, Drake." I checked my knife for the 10th time. This is my town. These are my people. I took an oath to protect them, and I'm not letting some territorial pissing match between alphas destroy everything I've worked for. He studied me for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden box worn smooth with age. "If things go wrong," he said, opening it. Inside was a silver ring, simple band, no stones, engraved with symbols that looked ancient and foreign and somehow familiar. "If Michael kills me, put this on immediately. It's a pack sigil. It'll mark you as under Kestrel Prime protection. My allies will honor it and keep you safe. You're not dying tonight, but if I do..." Drake. I took the ring and threw it across the gymnasium. It hit the far wall with a metallic ping and clattered to the floor.
"You're not dying
tonight." We didn't train for 12 hours straight, so you could be noble and self-sacrificing. We trained so we could both walk out of this alive. For the first time in hours, he smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, less like a weapon and more like a man. "Yes, ma'am, Sheriff." Then the howling started.
Distant at first,
echoing off the mountains. Then closer, moving fast, dozens of voices rising in a chorus that made my skin crawl and my hindbrain scream warnings about predators in the dark. Drake's eyes flashed amber. "They're here." They came through the southern edge of town like a wave of rust and teeth and yellow eyes. 50 wolves flooding through the streets in formation, organized, disciplined, moving with military precision. And leading them was Michael. He was bigger than the others by a full head. Scarred all over, patches of gray in his rust-colored fur, eyes that burned with cold intelligence and ancient rage. When he shifted to human form in the middle of Main Street, he was everything I'd expected: brutal face, scarred chest, radiating violence like heat off asphalt. "Reeves." His voice echoed through the empty streets, bouncing off abandoned buildings. "I know you're here. Stop hiding and face me like an alpha." Drake stepped out of the gymnasium. I stayed in the shadows near the entrance, knife ready, watching. "You've violated the treaty," Drake said, voice carrying clear and cold. "You attacked a neutral town, killed human officials, and declared war without provocation. By pack law, you've forfeited your right to formal challenge." Michael laughed, harsh and ugly. "Pack law? You think I care about laws written by weak alphas afraid to take what they want?" He gestured at his wolves arranged behind him. "I have strength. I have numbers. And soon I'll have your territory and everything in it. You'll have nothing but a grave." Big words from a wolf who's gone soft. Michael's yellow eyes found me in the shadows.
"Locked on."
"Is that her? The human mate who's made you weak?" Drake's entire body went rigid, every muscle tensing. "Leave her out of this."
"Why?"
"She's the whole reason we're here." Michael smiled, showing too many teeth. "Kill her and you'll stop caring about protecting human trash. Kill her and you'll remember what it means to be a real wolf, what it means to take what you want instead of begging for scraps. Touch her, and I'll rip out your throat. Then come do it. Michael shifted, fast, brutal, bones cracking like gunshots, and lunged. Drake met him halfway. The impact when they collided shook the street. Literal tremor through the asphalt. Two alphas at full speed, all fury and muscle and centuries of violence compressed into bodies that shouldn't have been able to move that fast. They were a blur of claws and teeth and savage grace, smashing through the hardware store window, tearing up chunks of asphalt, leaving gouges in concrete that shouldn't have been possible. The other wolves started advancing, spreading out, searching buildings. That's when Zara's voice came through my earpiece. Miley, they're spreading out in search patterns. You've got 6 heading directly for the gymnasium. I gripped my knife tighter. Copy that. Remember what we practiced. Fast, clean, don't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. Got it. The first wolf burst through the gymnasium doors. Massive rust-colored male, yellow eyes locked on me, jaws already open. I was ready. I ducked under its lunge, felt the wind of its passage, spun using momentum, and drove the silver blade up into its chest cavity between the ribs exactly where Trent had shown me. It convulsed once, yelped, and dropped. 2 more came through the shattered windows on opposite sides. I rolled left, came up slashing, caught one across the throat, arterial spray hot on my face. It went down gurgling and thrashing. The other tackled me before I could adjust, and we hit the floor hard. All the air knocked out of my lungs. Jaws snapping inches from my face. Hot breath that smelled like raw meat. Yellow eyes with nothing human behind them. I got my knife between us, barely, arms shaking with effort, and shoved upward with everything I had. Silver blade punched through fur and muscle. The wolf yelped and stumbled back, pawing at the wound. I pressed the advantage.
No hesitation.
Blade to the heart.
Twist.
Pull free.
It collapsed.
3 down. 3 to go. Then I heard the explosion. The mill went up in a fireball that lit the night sky orange and white and beautiful. Silver-laced shrapnel tore through the iron-hollow wolves who'd tried to flank us from the east. Screams. Howls that cut off mid-note. Chaos rippling through their formation. Michael's head snapped toward the sound, distraction costing him precious seconds. Drake's claws found his throat. But Michael was faster than he looked, faster than anyone that size should be. He twisted, broke free, left deep gouges in Drake's side, and ran. Not away from the fight. Toward me. And I realized too late what his real plan had been all along. He wasn't here to claim territory. He was here to break Drake by killing the one thing he couldn't bear to lose. Chapter 7. Michael hit me like a freight train. 1 second, I was standing in the gymnasium. The next, I was airborne, crashing through the wall into the parking lot. My knife skittered away across the asphalt. I tried to move. Couldn't. The impact had knocked the wind out of me, and something in my ribs felt wrong. Not broken, but close. Close enough that every breath was a sharp reminder that I was playing a game I had no business being in. Michael shifted to human form and grabbed me by the throat, lifting me off the ground like I weighed nothing. Because to him, I didn't. "Hello, little deputy," he said. His voice was gravel and smoke, the kind of sound that scraped against your bones. "You've caused me a lot of trouble." I clawed at his hand. Couldn't breathe. Spots dancing in my vision, turning the edges of the world gray. My lungs screamed for air that wouldn't come. "Drake," Michael called out, not even looking away from me. "Stop fighting, or I snap her neck." Everything went silent. The sounds of battle, snarling, tearing, the wet crunch of claws through flesh, all of it stopped. I could feel the moment Drake froze, could sense the shift in the air even through the haze of oxygen deprivation. Drake stood 50 feet away, covered in blood. Michael's, I couldn't tell anymore. His wolf was barely contained, eyes blazing amber, body trembling with the effort of not shifting. I'd never seen him look so close to losing control. "Let her go," Drake said. His voice was barely human, more growl than words. Drop to your knees and submit. Bare your throat. Acknowledge me as the dominant alpha. Michael's grip tightened on my throat, and I felt my windpipe compress. Or watch her die. Drake, don't. I choked out, the words barely audible. Michael squeezed tighter. Quiet human. Drake's eyes met mine, and I saw something that broke my heart more than the lack of oxygen ever could. Surrender. He was going to do it. Going to give up everything, his pack, his territory, his pride, his life, to save me. 400 years of dominance, of power, of being the apex predator, all thrown away for a human woman he'd known for 2 weeks.
No, he
Mouthed, even though no sound came out. He started to kneel. That's when I remembered the training. Zara's voice in my head, clear as a bell. Wolves are strong, but they have weak points. Eyes, throat, groin. If you're desperate, go for the soft targets. Make it count, because you won't get a second chance. I stopped struggling. Let my body go limp like I'd passed out, like the fight had gone out of me. Like I'd given up. Michael's grip loosened slightly. Just a fraction. Just enough. I drove my thumb into his eye socket as hard as I could. He screamed and dropped me. I hit the ground hard, gasped for air that burned going down, and rolled toward my knife. My vision was still spotty, my throat felt like it had been crushed, but adrenaline overrode everything else. Survival instinct kicked in. Michael, half-blind and furious, shifted back to wolf form and lunged at me with a snarl that shook the ground. Drake was faster. He hit Michael mid-leap, and they went down in a tangle of fur and rage. This time, there was no strategy.
no technique.
No testing each other's weaknesses, or looking for openings. Just 2 apex predators trying to kill each other with everything they had. Claws tore through flesh. Jaws snapped bone. Blood painted the asphalt. I grabbed my knife and ran toward them, even though every instinct screamed at me to run the other way. Miley, stay back. Zara's voice crackled in my earpiece, urgent and sharp. I ignored her. Drake had Michael pinned, jaws locked around his throat in a killing grip. But Michael's claws were digging into Drake's side, tearing through muscle, reaching for vital organs. I could see Drake's blood pooling on the ground, could see the way his grip was weakening. They were both dying. I raised the knife, hands shaking, and drove it into Michael's spine with everything I had left. Silver flooded his nervous system. He convulsed, released Drake, and collapsed onto the asphalt. His wolf form twitched, but he couldn't move.
Couldn't shift.
The silver had paralyzed him from the neck down. Drake staggered back, bleeding from a dozen wounds. He shifted to human, gasping, clutching his side where Michael's claws had gone deep. Too deep. Michael, still in wolf form, tried to stand. His front legs scrambled against the ground, but nothing below his shoulders worked. The silver was spreading, shutting down his nervous system one nerve at a time. Drake limped over to where I stood, took the knife from my shaking hand, his fingers warm against my cold ones. Turn around, he said softly. You don't need to see this. Yes, I do. He looked at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. Then he nodded. He knelt beside Michael and said something in a language I didn't understand. Something old. Ceremonial. The kind of words that carried weight beyond their meaning, that bound alphas to their actions and made death something more than just violence. Then he finished it. The remaining Iron Hollow wolves scattered. Without their alpha, they had no cohesion, no leadership, no reason to die for a cause that had already failed. Zara and Trent hunted down the ones who tried to fight. The rest fled into the wilderness, howling their loss into the pre-dawn darkness. By dawn, Oak Haven was silent again. But it was the silence of a battlefield, not peace. The kind of quiet that came after violence, heavy with the weight of what had been done. I sat on the steps of the sheriff's station, watching the sun come up over a town that was still standing.
Barely.
Smoke rose from a dozen fires. Buildings sagged where walls had been torn open. The gymnasium was gone entirely, just a smoking crater where it used to be. Drake sat beside me, wounds already healing. The gashes in his side were closing, flesh knitting back together in a way that should have been impossible. Werewolf regeneration was terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. "Is it over?" I asked. My voice was hoarse, throat bruised where Michael had grabbed me. "Yes." "What happens to Iron Hollow's territory now?" "It'll be divided among the neighboring packs. The survivors will be absorbed or exiled. The territory Michael claimed goes back to being neutral ground until someone's strong enough to take it."
He paused.
"It's done." I looked at him, at the exhaustion in his eyes, the blood on his clothes that was already drying, at the way he held himself like every bone in his body hurt. "You almost died." "So did you." "I'm human. I'm supposed to almost die. You're a 400-year-old alpha werewolf. You're supposed to be invincible." "I'm only invincible when I don't have anything to lose." He turned to face me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. "The second I met you, I became mortal, because losing you would kill me faster than any silver bullet ever could. That's a hell of a weakness. That's what love is." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable.
Love.
He hadn't said mate bond, or instinct, or destiny. He'd said love. "Drake." "You don't have to say it back," he said quickly, looking away. "I know this is complicated. I know you need time.
But I wanted you to know.
After everything we've been through, you deserve honesty." I thought about the last 2 weeks. The arrest, the fire, the training, the battle. Every moment we'd spent fighting side by side. Every time he'd had my back, when he didn't have to. Every choice he'd made that put me before his pack, his power, his pride. "I'm not good at this," I said. "Relationships, feelings, any of it. I've spent my whole life taking care of myself, because I had to. Letting someone in, letting someone take care of me. That's terrifying." "I know, but..." I took a breath. "When you said you'd burn the world down to keep me safe, I believed you. And when I stabbed Michael to save you, it wasn't because of some magical bond. It was because I couldn't imagine a world where you didn't exist." His breath caught. "So I don't know if it's love yet," I continued. "But it's something, and I want to see where it goes." Drake smiled, bright, unguarded, the happiest I'd ever seen him. Like I'd just given him something he never thought he'd have. "That's more than I ever hoped for," he said. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. The kiss was gentle, careful, nothing like the violence of the last 12 hours. It tasted like blood and smoke and something sweeter. Like coming home after a long war. Like finding something you didn't know you'd been searching for. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his, both of us breathing hard. "I'm still driving your car," I said. He laughed, and it was the best sound I'd heard in days. "Deal." Reality set in fast. Oak Haven was destroyed. Not completely, but enough. Burned buildings, shattered windows, claw marks on every surface. The school was gone. Half the downtown businesses were damaged beyond repair. The cleanup would take months. The repairs would cost millions. Money I didn't have. Money the county definitely didn't have. I stood in my office, now Sheriff Lipa's office officially since Canton was gone, and stared at the damage reports. The numbers blurred together, all of them bad. "We're going to have to declare it a disaster zone," I told Drake. "Apply for federal aid. Hope someone cares enough to help a small town in the middle of nowhere." "Or," Drake said, leaning against the doorframe, "you could accept help from someone who's already here." I narrowed my eyes. "I'm not taking your money. It's not charity. It's investment. Drake. Hear me out." He stepped into the office, moving carefully like his ribs were still sore. "Kestrel Prime owns construction companies, engineering firms, security corporations. We could rebuild Oak Haven in 6 months. Better than before. Create jobs, infrastructure, opportunity. And in exchange? Nothing. This is my territory. These are my people now because you're my mate, and what matters to you matters to me. That's still charity. It's partnership." He sat on the edge of my desk, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. Miley, you've spent your whole life refusing help because you thought it made you weak. But accepting support from people who care about you? That's not weakness. That's wisdom. I hated that he was right. Hated that my pride was the only thing standing between Oak Haven and a future that didn't involve years of decay and struggle.
Fine, I said.
But I'm overseeing every project, every decision, every dollar spent. This is still my town. I wouldn't have it any other way, Sheriff. I thought the war was over. I thought we'd won. But 6 months later, I learned something that changed everything. The mate bond wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice. And I was about to make the most important decision of my life. Chapter 8. 6 months after the Battle of Oak Haven, the town looked like something out of a fever dream. New buildings rose where burned shells had stood, all glass and steel and energy-efficient designs that looked nothing like the rundown structures they'd replaced. Main Street was alive again. Local shops, restaurants with actual customers, a bookstore that stayed open past 6. The community center had a gym, a pool, and meeting rooms that actually got used. People had jobs. Real jobs that paid enough to live on. Drake had kept his promise. Every single dollar had been accounted for. Every project had gone through community review. Every decision had my fingerprints on it. And somehow, miraculously, Oak Haven wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. I stood in the sheriff's station, completely rebuilt with modern equipment and an HVAC system that actually worked, and looked at my reflection in the window. The uniform fit better now. Custom-tailored, proper equipment, a badge that gleamed under the new LED lights. Sheriff Miley Lipa. I'd earned the title. Survived the fire, the war, the impossible odds. I had a town that respected me, deputies who trusted me, and resources I'd never even dreamed of back when I was scraping by on Canton scraps. I should have been happy. Instead, I felt like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't name, looking down into a void that kept getting wider. Because every night, Drake drove back to Valoria, to his penthouse overlooking the city, his pack, his billion-dollar empire that couldn't run itself. And every night, I stayed in Oak Haven, in my apartment above the station, alone with the sound of my own breathing and the awareness that something was missing. We talked every day, saw each other every weekend. But there was a distance between us that had nothing to do with the 60 miles of highway that separated our lives. The mate bond was pulling at me. I could feel it now, this constant awareness of where he was, what he was feeling. When he was stressed, my chest tightened. When he was happy, warmth spread through my ribs. It wasn't painful, exactly. Just persistent. Like a low-level hum in the back of my mind that never quite went away. Zara had warned me about this 2 months ago, sitting across from me in this very office with a coffee and the kind of expression that said she knew exactly what I was going through. The bond gets stronger over time, she'd said. Eventually, being apart will hurt. Physically hurt. Like someone's pressing on a bruise that never heals. What do? You complete it. Or you walk away before it's too late. Completing the bond meant more than just accepting Drake as my mate. It meant joining his pack, giving up part of my humanity, becoming something other than what I'd been my entire life. I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Wasn't sure I'd ever be ready for that. Drake showed up at my office on a Tuesday afternoon unannounced. He was holding a coffee from the new cafe downtown and wearing jeans and a leather jacket instead of his usual suit. He looked almost normal, almost human. Almost like someone who belonged in a small town instead of running an empire. Hey, he said. Got a minute? For you? Always. He sat across from my desk and slid the coffee toward me. Caramel latte. Extra shot, no whip. I took a sip. Perfect like always. You didn't drive an hour just to bring me coffee.
No.
He took a breath, and I saw tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. I came to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. What?
Here.
In Oak Haven. with the way things are between us. Are you happy? I wanted to say yes automatically, but he'd asked for honesty, and after everything we'd been through, he deserved it. I'm content, I said carefully. I love my job. I love what we've built here. The town is better than it's been in decades. But I miss you. Every night you leave, it feels like I'm missing a piece of myself. And I don't know how to fix that without giving up everything I've worked for. Drake leaned back in his chair, studying me with those amber eyes that saw too much. What if you didn't have to give up anything? Drake, you live in Valoria. You run a billion-dollar company. You have pack responsibilities that require you to be there. What if I moved here? I stared at him. What? What if I moved to Oak Haven, bought a house here, ran the company remotely, let Elliot handle the day-to-day operations in Valoria? You can't do that. Why not? Because you're an alpha. You have a pack to lead, territory to protect, a corporate empire that needs your physical presence. The pack will be fine. Zara can oversee Valoria operations. She's been my second for 50 years. She knows how to handle things. And my territory includes Oak Haven now, so I'd still be protecting it. Just from here instead of there. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Miley, I've spent 400 years building an empire. And none of it matters if I don't have you. My throat tightened. You'd really leave Valoria for me? I'd leave everything for you. Because you're not my weakness. You're my strength. You make me better. You make me want to be better. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. And I'm tired of pretending that running a company is more important than being with the woman I love. Not the silver ring from before. This one was different, smaller, more delicate. He opened it. Inside was a ring, rose gold, with a single diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across my desk. The band had intricate wolf head engravings, so detailed I could see individual fur marks. This isn't a mate bond, he said quietly. This is a choice. A human choice. Miley Lipa, will you marry me? I looked at the ring. At Drake. At the life we could have if I just said yes. You know what this means, right? I said. If I say yes, every werewolf in North America is going to lose their minds. A human sheriff married to an alpha will be breaking every tradition in the book. Good. Traditions are boring anyway. Your pack will question your judgment. They'll get over it. And if they don't, they can find another pack. Other alphas will see it as weakness. They'll think you're compromised. Let them try me. He smiled, sharp and dangerous. I'd enjoy the excuse. I couldn't help but smile back. You've really thought this through. I've had 400 years to think about what I want. And it's you. Just you. Not power, not territory, not immortality. You. I stood up, walked around the desk, and took his hands. They were warm, solid, real. Ask me again, I said. He stood, eyes searching mine like he was looking for doubt and finding none. Miley Lipa, will you marry me? Yes. The word came out strong, clear, certain. No hesitation. No second-guessing. Drake's whole face transformed. The tension melted away, replaced by something so bright it almost hurt to look at. He slipped the ring onto my finger, perfect fit, like he'd known exactly what size I needed, and pulled me into a kiss that made the rest of the world disappear. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and laughing and crying all at once. So what now? I asked. Now we live. He grinned, and it was the most human expression I'd ever seen on him. And maybe you finally let me drive my own car. Absolutely not. 6 months later, I was patrolling Route 7 on a Saturday afternoon when I saw it. A Rolls-Royce Phantom. Obsidian black. Custom rims that probably cost more than my annual salary. Going 148 miles per hour. I flipped on my lights and sirens, already grinning. The Phantom pulled over immediately, easing onto the shoulder, like the driver had been expecting this. I walked up to the driver's window, trying not to smile and failing completely. Drake rolled down the window, grinning right back at me. Good afternoon, Sheriff. Was I going too fast? You know you were. Are you going to arrest me? I should. Pretty sure this is your third offense this month. But I leaned in through the window and kissed him. But I've got better plans for you. He raised an eyebrow.
Oh, yeah.
We're going home. I made dinner reservations at that new Italian place downtown, and if you're late because you were showing off in your overpriced car, I'm filing for divorce. We've been married 3 months, and I'll do it again. He laughed, bright, unguarded, the sound that still made my heart skip. Yes, ma'am, Sheriff Reeves. I walked back to my cruiser, a brand new SUV with every bell and whistle, courtesy of Kestrel Prime Industries, and climbed in. The ring on my finger caught the sunlight, throwing little rainbows across the dashboard. Drake followed me into town, staying exactly 5 miles under the speed limit the entire way. We lived in a custom-built house on the edge of Oak Haven, where the town met the forest. Big enough for the pack when they visited, private enough for quiet nights together. It had a home office for Drake where he ran his empire via video calls and encrypted servers. A gym for me where I worked out the stress of keeping a small town safe. And a kitchen where we'd learn to cook together, badly but together. The town was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. My deputies were well-trained and well-paid. The community center hosted movie nights and farmers markets and youth programs. Kids played in the new park without fear of what lurked in the shadows, because what lurked in the shadows was on our side now. And every night, Drake came home to me. No more penthouse. No more distance. No more feeling like I was missing a piece of myself. Just us. We pulled into the driveway side by side. I got out, and he met me at the front door, taking my hand like he always did. Think we'll ever get bored of this? I asked. Of speeding tickets and small-town domesticity. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. Never. Good answer. He kissed my forehead, then my nose, then my lips. I love you, Sheriff. I love you too, Alpha. We went inside together, and I thought about the night I'd arrested him. How I'd been broke, desperate, and certain my life was falling apart. How I'd been one paycheck away from losing everything and willing to risk it all for a speeding ticket that would save my job. I'd pulled over a stranger doing 148 in a 55Z. 1. And I'd found home. The mate bond hummed contentedly in my chest, warm and steady and right. I still didn't know if I'd ever complete it fully, if I'd ever take that final step and become part of his pack in the supernatural sense. But I didn't need to know right now. Because this life we'd built together, this choice we made every single day to be together, this was enough. More than enough. This was everything. And that's where we'll leave Miley and Drake. Living there happily ever after in Oak Haven, pulling each other over for speeding just to keep things interesting. If you made it all the way to the end of this 2-hour audiobook, you're officially part of the Gracie Werewolf Story Bank Pack. Thank you for spending your time with us. If you love the story, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling us what you thought. Did you ship Miley and Drake? Would you want to see more stories set in this world? Let us know. And hey, if you're watching from another country, comment and tell us where you're tuning in from. We've got listeners from all over the world, and we love seeing how far these stories travel. We've got more werewolf romances, shifter dramas, and paranormal audiobooks coming your way. This is just the beginning. Until next time, stay wild, stay fierce, and remember, sometimes the best love stories start with a speeding ticket. This is Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, signing off.